Hello and welcome to this special post-Miami edition of It's a Sports Show. DP, you got quite the smile on you. Dolphin Paul on the side of me, as always. I'm Scott Cray. And another fine edition of It's a Sports Show. And finer for you by the moment. Everyone just tuned out because they just saw you. They don't want anything to do with it.
Hey, listen, that's why we root for sports. That's the way things go. And excuse my voice, it's a little more hoarse than it normally is.
Screaming for the Dolphins.
We just come back, as you know, from a nice long weekend in Miami and with the sports radio station, and another fantastic victory for my Dolphins. I've gone down 8 times, and we're 6-2, so that's pretty good.
Not a bad deal.
I know Patriot fans aren't going to like to hear this, but
I know that a couple of things last week they didn't like to hear.
Oh, I know, but that's my job. But you know, there's not many better things in life than being in your own stadium. Unfortunately, I sit with all Patriot fans because I go on a group tour. So
unfortunately or fortunately,
well,
you get to glow
in this case,
more.
Fortunately, and fans were riding me hard, of course, before the game. I will say this: tons of Patriot fans in Miami.
Oh yeah,
lots of Patriot fans, buses and bus loads. We had our group. They made these. One guy, Tom, he works at Point Judith Country Club. Nice guy. Made these Patriots. It's very impressive, all out of foam.
Oh, yeah?
He made them for his group. He had like 6 of them, had the big tail on it and everything.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, he did a good job. So I think Patriot fans were rather cocky heading into the stadium. So
I'm sure. Well, I heard you on the score a couple of times, and it wasn't. You didn't even have to talk. You came to the podium, and it was like a shower of boos. We couldn't even hear you.
I love it. Boos energize me.
But then they had to tuck their heads between their tails because it's a long bus ride back from the stadium.
Like I said, there's not many better things than with about, when the outcome isn't in doubt.
Yep.
And I get to stand up in the middle of all those Patriot fans and go, exit, stage left, please.
Now, what kind of reactions do you get when, like you go up to Yankee fans after a big weekend-long 4-game series, and they throw out, well, who has the most championships?
That's pretty much what you get from Patriot fans.
Same thing.
We'll see you in the playoffs. Oh, you're not in the playoffs.
Right.
How many Super Bowls have you won? Which is expected. But I'll say this. The group that goes down with us on 790 The Score, obviously people I've known for a long time because I see the ones here. Good group of people. We go back and forth pretty good, but in general they laugh and
it's a lot of respect,
and have a good time. Of course, they don't like to lose. And, they're sad on the bus, and I'm the only one going, Yahoo, Yahoo. But
is there? That was my other question. Is there a Dolphin someone elsewhere? There's got to be.
No, not really. There's about 3, 4, 5 Patriot Dolphin fans that go on a trip. They're low key. I'm the only Yahoo. I'm the only Yahoo wearing all my Dolphin stuff. I'll tell you what, and I wore it all the way back.
I'm sure.
To New England, and I didn't come back with the group. I kind of came back on my own, and there was some people in the plane, talking about, they making fun of the way we talk, and so I was just in the back of the plane. But hey, that's the way it is. But I mean, getting to the actual game.
Well, I'll treat you with respect, and instead of saying usual,
thank you.
Everybody around here wants to know what the Patriots did wrong, and that's all we've heard over the last 48 hours is what did the Patriots do wrong. I'll treat you with some respect and say, Dolphin Paul, what did Miami do right?
Well, I think the main thing, and again, I'm up in the stadium, so it's hard to watch the game, see the replays.
It's a different perspective.
I had to get a lot of the stuff secondhand, but I mean, obviously, I think the biggest thing, without question, was harassing Tom Brady. Mm-hmm. I think Nick Saban's, and I've been on him, as you know, throughout the year, probably Nick Saban's finest coaching work against his mentor. I mean, I think they just basically did a great job in harassing Tom Brady. We talked about him not having those receivers. I know this is going to come up every time. It's going to seem like every time they lose, it's like they never surround Tom Brady with their talent. But, even him, Tom Brady, as good as he is, you harass the you-know-what out of him, the bejesus out of him, and he's going to have a hard day. Jason Taylor, who's probably maybe 1, 2, 3 for Defensive Player of the Year, is having a terrific year from what I understand and what I read in replays. They couldn't stop him. Right. And I think Miami's plan was just say, hey, get to Brady at all costs. That's what they did.
Constantly throughout the game. They didn't let up at all.
Constantly, they hit him. Zach Thomas is a tackling machine. I love him, by the way. I mean, he's like Bruce Gale. Compare him to Bruce Gale. I don't want to sit here and make Miami out to be the greatest team because it's disrespectful to Patriot fans. Because it is. I have a lot of fun, but Patriot fans are still leading the division. But, if you can't admire Zach Thomas, even if you're a fan of any other team, then, you're not a real football fan.
Right.
I mean, the guy's undersized. He's just a tackling machine.
Yep.
And defensively, they surprisingly just shut down the Patriots. I mean, Tom Brady under 100 yards.
Because of the pressure.
I would have never thought that.
And he looked like he was getting frustrated as the third quarter started to progress in the same way that the entire first half did, where, like you said, the Miami was just no holds barred going after Brady. It was a good game plan on Saban's part. And I'm a little surprised in a way because they made the Patriots O-line look terrible, and they're really not that bad.
Yeah, I was surprised at that. I mean, Matt Light has done a pretty good job against Jason Taylor in the past. Obviously, the two teams know each other well, but Jason Taylor's just having a terrific year. And Miami has an older defensive line, but, I mean, the game plan worked to a T. They just harassed the crap out of him. Of course, the big play was that forward lateral.
Right.
To
Brady.
I mean, if they had scored there, I was sitting with a friend, and I told him, we're one Joey Harrington mistake away from this game being turned around. 13-7.
Sure.
Classic Tom Brady drive. Patriots 14-13. So I was very worried, even at 13-0, because, in those tight games, it's field position.
Right.
Miami punter did a terrific job of pinning the Patriots in.
Right.
So, I mean, if the Patriots scored that touchdown, if that's a legitimate back pass.
In that particular play where you have someone that's not familiar with passing the ball, that play is going to move forward as is, regardless. He probably knew as he was releasing it that Brady was too far forward, but what do you do?
The play has to develop too, right?
And look for a receiver.
Right.
You don't have that mentality.
Sometimes those trick plays, you've got to execute them quick, and some guys get a little bit overzealous.
Right.
And, I mean, unless it's open, I mean, you've got to do it quick. I mean, it's one of those plays that develops. If Brady's back, he can throw it. And the Miami plays, I guess they ran up to Brady, and I guess it was Daniel Graham was wide open, but fortunately for Miami, it was a forward pass, and they recognized that right away.
2 forward passes in a row.
But they had to resort to that in order to score, because obviously they couldn't do anything else.
Yeah, they had to mix it up.
Ironically, from what I understand, that was supposed to be a loss of down. So the Patriots actually got 5 downs on that. I think the referees blew that when they talked about that the following. It was supposed to be a loss of down. Good thing it didn't come back to
bite him in the.
Didn't come back to bite him, but I mean, this begs the question. Number one, for Miami, why can't they do this more often or more weeks? Maybe it was just our Super Bowl. And number two, I mean, this is a question maybe for Patriot fans out there. I mean, what did they think of this team? I mean, they look great at times. They look bad at times. I mean, right now, I think you'd have to say they're not a Super Bowl team at this particular point. But, we're going to go through the AFC a little bit real quick.
And we will go through the AFC, but at this rate, if they can't afford to lose a couple more games, because then they're at risk of possibly even losing the division at that point, which is just preposterous. This is a team. It's a good team. It's a lot better than the team that showed up to play Miami. Miami just did the right thing. My concern is that other teams, the Patriots' future opponents, at least for the rest of the season, are able to look at this game film now in Miami and say, oh, so maybe that's what we need to do. So it'll be interesting to see how opponents approach the Patriots similar to the manner that Miami did, and do the Patriots adjust to that?
Well, it's a copycat league, there's no doubt about it.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, fortunately for the Patriots, two things. One is the Jets lost.
I know.
Buffalo went into New York, so
such an opportunity for the Jets.
We talked about the AFC East being a bad division, but it's pretty competitive. I mean, Buffalo.
When they play each other, it seems like.
Well, Buffalo's been better than we thought. The
Right.
Jets have been better than we thought, and Miami's probably the most disappointing team in the division. But as we stand now, I mean, the Jets would have been 1 game behind in New England, which would have been scary. So New England kind of lucked out that the Jets lost, and New England has Houston on the schedule. So Houston can copy Miami's game plan, but it's another thing whether they can execute it or not.
And Houston's known to play a couple of tough teams.
They lost at home against Tennessee, which is another thing we could
They'll play tough, though.
Talk about. Well, at this point, you don't know what you're going to get if you're a New England fan.
Well, it's interesting because in Miami's case, they finished up the season so strong last year. And this year, you kind of did the opposite in a way. They kind of melted off quickly, and you expected them to pick things up, and they did, then they didn't. Now they did again. So it'll be interesting to see.
Well, they're definitely finishing a lot stronger than they started, which
definitely.
is, in the last 2 years, if you remember, before everybody said, "Oh, Miami get off to a great start," then they couldn't win a game in December to save their lives.
Right.
They used to start off 6-2, 7-1, and just barely make the playoffs, and they haven't made the playoffs in 5 years, which is very frustrating.
Instead,
now they're doing the opposite. People down in Miami are asking, why can't we play this good every week? And they've also played well against good teams. New England, they went in and beat Chicago at Chicago, which nobody has done. So
might have a lot to do with Coach Saban as far as We've talked a lot about his abilities as a coach, and then next year will be his third year already, right?
Third year.
So maybe that's that magical year that it seems like when he has a good game plan, that team is unstoppable.
Well, him and Belichick are defensive coaches.
Sure.
So, they love the defense. And,
Yep.
and Saban's done a pretty good job with this defense for the most part. Like I said, I think this week was the best game that he called. And, from a Patriots point of view, you can say we didn't show up, we didn't play. But we talked about that before. If you're on a losing end, you give credit to the other team, but you've got to look inside and see what you do wrong. So I'm sure the Patriots are going to go back and say, listen, we got to protect Tom much better this Sunday. Let's bring in a running back, a 2 tight end set. Let's make sure Tom doesn't get harassed. And I give credit to the Patriots for taking Brady out with a few minutes to go. A lot of teams don't do that.
Right.
They bring in the backups because he was getting hit. Why get the guy hurt? So.
Exactly. At that point, you're down 21-0, and you can't make anything
Well,
happen.
I think we should move on into the AFC as much as I'd like to talk about the Miami victory all day.
Fire it up, baby.
Well, as we talked about, Buffalo went into the Jets and beat the Jets, so it's hard to figure this thing out. I mean,
like you said, the Jets would have only been one game out at this point.
One game behind. So right now, I don't have the remaining Patriots schedule, but they play Houston. I think they still obviously have a good edge on winning the division. Jets are right on the bubble of the playoff race, and Buffalo and Miami need a lot of help.
Pretty much out of it at this point.
Their chances are very, very slim. They're not mathematically eliminated, but, almost be a miracle for either team to do it, and they'd have to win out.
Right.
I don't know who. Miami plays at Buffalo, so one of those teams is going to be eliminated next week.
When you look at New England's schedule going forward, there's no reason why they shouldn't win out for the rest of the way. They only have 3 games to go, and the question now, I think a lot of New England fans are asking with this loss, and that's what we're not talking about. We're talking about the loss to Miami, but how about just the loss in general as it relates to the playoff picture? This is a team now that's probably going to play on Wild Card Weekend at this point. Wild Card Weekend. That's.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, Indianapolis lost, but Indianapolis already beat them.
Yep.
They're 10-3. Baltimore is a team we talked about at the beginning of the year when we had our preview show that could make some noise with McNair. And I'll tell you what, you catch that defense in the right spot, for instance, at home, a playoff game, that defense is still top notch.
Yeah.
And they got Steve McNair, who now, they finally got a QB who can manage a game, make some big plays. So
a veteran.
They're tough there. Jacksonville's 8-5. That probably won't matter because of the wild card.
Well, right now Jacksonville's fighting with Cincinnati for that wild card spot for the most part. They're both 8-5. But then you got in the West, San Diego clinched. We talked about that, and Kansas City and Denver are 7-6. So they could be fighting for that wild card spot too. Between Kansas City and Denver, neither team compared to Cincinnati and Jacksonville really look competitive enough to be in that wild card. But stranger things have happened.
Denver is a team who's, completely dropped off. They were so dominant. If you remember, their first 5-6 games, they allowed almost a limited number of points, which was almost a record. Now they decided to go with Jay Cutler, and it's not just Jay Cutler, but they're not faring very well. They're 7-6 now. San Diego's a team you've got to talk about.
Yeah.
San Diego looks to me
ridiculous
right now like the best team in football. Number one,
LT.
They got the best player in football, bar none.
Yeah.
Let's get that right out of the way.
By the way, a sidebar on that, just broke a record for most touchdowns in a season, I believe. So
29.
Yeah, just ridiculous.
Which is unbelievable. We talked about San Diego getting rid of Breeze. Right now, it looks like a good call on their part. They got Phillip Rivers, who was on the bench doing nothing. He's playing well. They're 11-2. They look like the best team in football. So, they're going to be a lock. Maybe Indianapolis or Baltimore, depending on what happens there. Then we got all the wild card teams. And like you said, probably Jacksonville, Cincinnati, who's turned it up a notch a little bit in that mix.
Cincinnati's got they've got so much mental problems on that damn team. I've kind of turned on them a little because every week, I know.
Turn the cup around. Turn the cup around.
We're black, baby. Well, it just seems like every week someone new is getting arrested, and they have so much talent on that team, but it starts from the top. And if these guys are getting into so much trouble, it's got to be in relation to a lack of discipline from the top. It reminds me of what team was it that got? Was it Minnesota that got into a bunch of trouble on a boat tour a couple of years ago?
You know what I mean?
There's just no discipline on this team if these guys are all getting busted.
But they're winning and they've got a lot of talent.
It's amazing that they are with everything that's going on that team. So over in the National Conference, Dallas they lost.
Dallas gets drubbed at home by New Orleans, who's another team we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
The Giants kind of revitalized their season a little bit. Philly, Jeff Garcia has done a pretty good job.
I've been impressed.
They hung on.
Yeah.
Washington, big disappointment. Snyder must be beside himself with bringing Joe Gibbs back and all the,
Washington, as it relates to a franchise, is just a joke.
Well, we've talked about that before. It's so tough to recreate magic.
Yeah.
People bring back Jimmy Johnson or Joe Gibbs. Things happen in this life sometimes once, twice if you're absolutely lucky. So just because you bring people back, it doesn't necessarily mean everything's
it's a different era of football, too.
The circumstances are completely different. New Orleans with my man Drew Brees.
Ridiculous.
The curse of Drew Brees.
Drew Brees. Where would Miami be with him right now?
5 touchdowns against Dallas. They're 9-4. They could make some noise there. And of course,
absolutely.
Drew Brees. Let me just say one thing. I'd love to have Drew Brees in Miami, but I would say right now he probably wouldn't be having the same success.
No,
in
he'd
Miami.
be a better fit in New Orleans.
Right.
With the talent
well,
that
he's got a lot more talent
by.
with Reggie Bush and Joe Horn and those guys, so they can light
Reggie Bush
it up.
is just ridiculous, isn't he? And we finally waited for the point where we all get to watch Reggie Bush play, and he is just a joy to watch.
Well, we talked about earlier, Houston. Hello. Yep. Ding, 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 ding. So Reggie Bush doing a job there, Atlanta. 1 week they win, 1 week they lose. We don't know what's up with Atlanta.
I don't have much respect for teams that are only one game over 500 at this point. It's not. It just seems like they're not even worth.
Well, the Dolphins are one game under 500. Where does that put them?
Yeah, even lower
does that
in
put
respect.
them in lower than respect?
A 7-6 team does not belong in the playoffs.
Carolina, I'd have to say, my Super Bowl pick in the NFC, put them right along with Miami's.
Yeah.
Disappointing. It's not like they got a ton of injuries. Jake Delhomme, John Fox, they've played some good games, but they've given up big leads at the end. Chicago, boy, Rex Grossman, he bounced back pretty well.
They already clinched too.
Devin Hester, their special teams guy, scored 2 touchdowns, I believe, last night, Monday Night Football.
Well, they were fortunate that the week before, Rex Grossman played terrible, absolutely terrible, and they still won the game. So they lucked out that they were able to pull that off.
Defense. Their thing in the playoffs is going to be, Rex, please don't lose the game.
That's all.
Let our
just don't make
defense
mistakes.
do its job. Let our special teams do its job. Rex,
and he did a little better in those situations. We saw him throw a couple of balls away that he should have.
He had a 1.3 rated week before, but he had it. I don't know what he ended up with, but he played well.
Well, he's on the cusp too of getting knocked out possibly from that QB if he did not perform well.
He could be, but they're sticking with him.
Yep.
Seattle. I mean, what can you say about them? Did they lose against Arizona? Matt Leinett's starting to get into a little bit of a groove, and Seattle's obviously not the same team we thought.
The entire Western Conference is not like it used to be in the 80s.
They've given up more points they've scored, so that's definitely not the same conference that we thought. So
this whole National Conference is interesting to see.
Miami would have a great shot in the conference. Buffalo would be alive. The Jets would be alive. So
you're going to have teams at 500 or maybe a game above having chance for wild-card spots, let alone spots as a division leader.
So even though things change week to week, right now, I mean, obviously you're looking at San Diego, Chicago.
Yep.
Or I mean, you never know once the playoffs start. The Patriots have got hot at the end. To me, they don't have a Super Bowl team. You just never know. San Diego, the big X factor with them, as you know, is Marty.
Right.
Marty in the playoffs. I know, Ernest.
Well, you talked about bringing some of that, nostalgia back or whatever, and that's a case where, guy's been around for a long time, and he's got I know where you're going with this. He's got a pattern that he seems to follow.
He's got a pattern. When he gets to the playoffs, it's like me standing over a 2-foot putt that means something. You pucker up. Exactly. That's what it is, and he's had some times. I know, Ernest Biner fumbled way back when he was a coach in Cleveland. That wasn't his fault. But I've seen games in the playoffs. I'll just give you for instance, Kansas City, I believe the Jets a few years ago, when he had a field goal to win the game.
Yep.
You're like at the 40-yard line, you need 10 yards, and you run like 3 draw plays and just kick, and you miss the field goal. You got to go for the jugular in those situations. You got to be smart, but you can't.
It's too conservative.
Up. Too conservative in the playoffs.
In the playoffs, right? I don't know why.
And I don't know why you'd be conservative with the San Diego team, because they got a ton of talent. So
absolutely, they have an offense that can move the ball.
We'll see if this year changes, but I mean,
I don't even know why you change the way your team plays in the playoffs anyway. If you were conservative all along, that's different. But you really shouldn't. I don't think you should really change your game plan.
Like I said,
completely, it got you there.
Well, like I said, you pucker up. This is it. You lose, you're out. So, and I love Marty as a coach. He's done a tremendous job in the NFL. One of the better coaches in the NFL. He just has to prove his mettle in the playoffs.
Yep. I don't know. In the National Conference, I like New Orleans, of course. We talked about it at the beginning of the season after we saw all the hoopla that was their home start and they're back home and they revitalized that community. And we said it would be a feel-good story throughout. And it started off that way for 3-4 weeks, and it was like, wow, watch them go, watch them go. Me personally, I kind of lost touch with them a little bit. I was aware of what they were doing, but wasn't following it every week like I was the first few weeks. And then to kind of all of a sudden look and say, wow, these guys, there's really no particular reason with 3 games left why they shouldn't win that division. They're 2 games up on Atlanta. So to be able to be a divisional winner and be a strong contender in this weak National Conference, I got to root for those Saints, man.
And they play Washington next week, so they could, who knows, they could possibly wrap up the division. So, I mean, it changes week to week. There's 3 weeks to go.
Yep.
So it'll be rather exciting.
I like Chicago and New Orleans in the National Conference. I don't see any other teams in that National Conference, including Dallas with T.O. and Parcells, that looks like they could compete with anybody in the American Conference.
At this point, you'd have to agree, but we'll certainly keep you updated.
How much time we got left, Jen, you said? 9 minutes.
9 minutes. So
Perfect
next week, New England, Houston.
It's okay, New England fans. It'll be okay.
We have some other sports activity.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about the Celtics. At the time we're shooting this, I believe they are 6-13 or 7-13. So, you know, I watched a great game on Saturday, I believe, or Sunday maybe. I don't remember which day it was, where Pierce won it at the buzzer. They looked tremendous in that game, and they gave a tough team a run for their money, really. But you just look at their overall playing ability, and I stick by what I said a couple weeks ago, which is I'm sick of hearing Doc say, you know, this is a great team, you got to give it time. Enough time has gone by now, and with trade rumors going around with Allen Iverson, he's all packed up. He's not playing anymore for, is it Philly? For Philly. He's not playing anymore for Philly. He will be traded by the end of this week and may have been done so by the time you guys are watching this show on Thursday. The question comes down to, with the Celtics having a bunch of young players, but therefore being a little bit of a lack of talent to win games, is AI a good fit for Boston? And I guess I pose this question to you first before I put my own 2 cents in there.
Well, it depends who they gave up, but would it be a good fit in Boston? To me, absolutely. Love to have him in Boston.
You're looking at giving up. Iverson's making $17 million this year, 19, and then 21. They want something in the range of 13 to 21 back. So they're not really looking pennies on the dollar, I think is the term that they were using. I was saying it wrong before the show, but they're not looking to get pennies on the dollar. Obviously, everybody knows what situation they're in, so they stand to lose something. 13 mil, though, and we have like a bunch of young guys not making any money. So you're going to have to throw a $10 or $11 million contract at hthem. You're going to have to throw a name at him. It's not going to be Pierce, but
I don't care who they throw at him. Find a way to bring him in. When Al Jefferson came out, I loved him. Maybe he's a late bloomer. I know we've given up on some Celtics in the past, like Chauncey.
He's coming about now.
Yeah, he's coming around a little bit. I mean, you know, I don't know. It's just the frustrating part is it's taking so long.
Right.
We've got all these young guys. It's just taking so long.
I'll tell you, though.
Al Jefferson, Sebastian Telfair, and I guess Delonte West, which what was rumored. I would give up those 3 guys, and I would drive him to Philadelphia for Allen Iverson. Yeah, he's attitude, but Allen Iverson with Paul Pierce, come on.
First, let me talk about Jackson and stick up for him a little, because he's the go-to guy offensively when they start double teaming or even sometimes triple teaming Paul Pierce. And Pierce has no problem. I saw that in the game over the weekend. Pierce has no problem dishing it off to Jackson and letting him rack up the points. If you get rid of Jackson, who's your go-to guy at this point? And you would say Iverson. Well, Iverson's got a tood. He's a punk, right? The worst thing you want to do for a bunch of young guys on a team is to bring a punk in. They're going to be, Allen Iverson, let's watch him play, he's so good. But that's the problem. They're going to watch him play and not be a part of it.
Celtics need to win. Iverson and Pierce, I mean, that'd be their best
it's a great one,
tandem in a long time because, you know, it's just frustrating with these guys.
I agree.
It's just frustrating because they got the young players. But, you know, I mean, how long are you going to wait for these young players? I mean, you wait 5-6 years, is Pierce going to be too far gone? I mean, I like the young players. They got great. Scott and previews, or Jefferson, or.
But you're sick of waiting for it all to
yeah,
come together.
I mean Perkins and Sebastian Telfair.
Part of me agrees with you.
It's just frustrating because supposedly they can do this, they can do that.
But it hasn't come to fruition yet. And I'm kind of with you because let me tell you, I'm pretty consistent in my ways as far as like seeing people with attitudes like Terrell Owens, Randy Moss, Allen Iverson. And I'm also pretty consistent about players that make much more money than they deserve, which covers just about anybody in sports, but that's another story for a different day. Normally I'd be adamant about AI coming to Boston. I would think it's a complete mistake. But part of me is really frustrated with this team not winning, and you got to bring somebody in. And I would only hope that Iverson would have the type of mentality where, remember he said a couple of years ago, he's approaching 30, I think he's like 31 or 32 now. Oh, I'm approaching 30 and I'm sick of my kids reading about me in the papers in negative ways. It's time for me to grow up. But his actions haven't shown that. I would think maybe a fresh start would allow him to do that. Maybe he'd be a different type of AI.
Well, it's the classic fresh start. I don't know how much he would change. I mean,
11 years in Philly, he's in a groove of attitude now.
As groove of attitude. Well,
just came up with that.
As long as he didn't go too far over the conduct line. But you know what?
Well, he did in Philly.
I mean, if you turn on the TV now and you watch the Celtics, who do you really want to see? It's Paul Pierce.
Right. I would.
They got some other guys. Everybody contributes here and there. You turn it on Christmas Day and you see the Celtics with Pierce and Allen Iverson.
Right.
I want to see it. I want to watch it because that'll be some exciting ball.
I probably watch as many Celtics games as your average basketball fan. Not every day, but I watch some. And I would tune in more if AI were on the team. But as soon as the dude started breaking out his toot, I'd be ticked.
We'll see what happens. It's supposed to happen this week.
How much time we got left, Jen?
About 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Just enough time to talk about Daisu Matsusaka.
Yeah, but the Red Sox slowly cranking. We'll have to spend a little more time as the weeks comes.
They got a Wednesday night deadline, so we're kind of...
I think it's Thursday night.
Is it Thursday night now?
Thursday night.
So maybe they're meeting that deadline right when people are watching our show on Thursday night. But Scott Boras throwing out the fact that he believes that Daisu Saka is well worth $100 million on top of the 51. Not in addition to.
We probably don't have enough time to spend on this, and we will obviously once this deal because by the next week when we do the show. But anyway, there's been a lot of questions about Scott Boras today as far as his clients having a say in what he does. He's one of those guys who says, "I'm your agent. I'm handling this negotiation." A story has come out of today, as somebody pointed out in the Boston papers. Or an interesting fact, when A-Rod first signed with Texas, he said after he wouldn't mind have signed with the Mets.
Right.
So it's like, here's a guy who had more control than any player in the whole NFL, more leverage than anybody in Major League Baseball. So you're wondering, especially being a Japanese player, not familiar with American cultures, systems, and so forth.
Boras taking advantage of that.
I'm going to take care of this. And you know what? Yeah, it's going to come down to Thursday, and the Red Sox are going to have to decide if they're going to pony up for this guy. With the signing of J.D. Drew, who, I mean, everybody's questioning the amount of money. I don't understand that.
It's ridiculous.
Lugo, and they're going to have to pay a ton of money for a first-year player, and he wants like a 7-8 year deal, so...
I agree.
This is going to make or break the Red Sox.
Sure. I think Boras may have read about himself a little too many times and seen himself a little too many times, and he forgets that he's representing and working for a player and not actually...
But he has a lot of clients because they know he can get him the dough, so...
We'll see what happens here. There's no way Matsusaka goes back to Japan. It's not happening, and Boras has that against him in that aspect. We'll see what happens.
See what happens. Next week, we probably have an answer for you.
Awesomeness. Hey, it's a sports show, yahoo.com. Keep those emails coming. And thanks to Jen.
I just want to say one last thing.
Oh, this should be good.
Fear the Dolphin.
Yeah, next year maybe. Take care, everyone.